ಸಿಂಬಲ್ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಹಾರ್ಟ್ ಟಾಪ್
ಅಲ್ಲ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್
ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ.
ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತದೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕೈನ ಗಮನಿಸಿದ್ವಿ ಒಂದೇ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬೋದು. ಇಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಮುಖಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಇಡುವುದಾಗಿ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ನಂಬುದು
ಗೋಪಾಲ್
ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ಅಂದೆ.
ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಆಯ್ತು ಸರಿ ಇದೆ. ಪ್ರಣಾಮ್ ಸ್ವಾಮೀಜಿ.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಮನೆ. ಶಿವಮಲ್ಲ
ಮಸಾಜ್ ಆಸನ್.
ಓಂ ಸ್ಥಾಪಕಾಯ ಚ ಧರ್ಮಸ್ಯ ಸರ್ವಧರ್ಮಸ್ವರೂಪಿಣೇ ಅವತಾರ ವರಿಷ್ಠಾಯ ರಾಮಕೃಷ್ಣಾಯ ತೇ ನಮಃ. Sri Ramakrishna's 16 monastic disciples are unique in their own way. In each of them, one or other special characteristics we can find in them. The speciality of Latu Maharaj, or today we shall take up Swami Adbhutanandaji's life, familiarly called as Latu Maharaj. That is the name given by Sri Ramakrishna to this boy, even though his name was Rutturam. Great surprise is how these 16 monastic disciples, each having their own special characters, lived together. Each was different from one another. For example, if you take Swami Turiyananda or Swami Abhedananda, they were always immersed in the study of the scriptures. Of course, we need not say anything about Swami Vivekananda. Even though these two people were always merged in Vedanta, scriptures, study of the scriptures, explaining all these things. But Adbhutanandaji Maharaj, that is Latu Maharaj, was totally different from this. He was absolutely illiterate. Not only illiterate, even coming from a village, and that too he was coming from Bihar, so he did not know much of Bengali. He was very familiar with Hindi, and that too a different type of Hindi. So he did not know even the alphabets. Later we will see Sri Ramakrishna and another illiterate person from the worldly point of view. One day he tries to teach this Swami Adbhutanandaji. He calls him, Latu, come, you should know at least alphabets and also a little reading and also a little signing of your name. So, whatever master used to say, literally, Latu Maharaj used to obey. So, Sri Ramakrishna starts, even though he himself is not so illiterate, he was literate in the sense he could read and he also could write. So he started teaching him a, I, E, U, L. Then when it came to Ka, Kha, Ga, Gha, Nga, Sri Ramakrishna said, tell Ka. Latu Maharaj uttered Kha. Sri Ramakrishna said, not Kha, it is Ka. Any number of times Latu Maharaj tried, but he could utter only Kho, Kho. Sri Ramakrishna becomes a little annoyed. He says, if you say Kho for Ka itself, then when I teach you Kho, what will you say? Again Latu Maharaj said Kho. Sri Ramakrishna could not make him utter Kho at all. Then he closed the book and said, enough, you need not learn anything. Both of them heartily laughed because Latu Maharaja was not interested in learning any of these academic things, just like his master. But Latu Maharaj became a great jnani, great jnani. That's why Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda used to say, Latu is Sri Ramakrishna's greatest miracle. Having absolutely no education, he has attained the highest wisdom simply by virtue of the Master's touch, Sri Ramakrishna's blessing, pleased by his service, more than that, pleased by his devotion to God, still more than that, pleased by his obedience to his Master. Whatever Master used to say, just like others, he was not discriminating. He was not going to think what Master has said, is it correct or not, in what way it is correct. All those things was not entering his brain at all. My Master has said, over. That was a Veda Vakya for Latu Maharaja. Because of that such sincerity, Sri Ramakrishna bestows his grace on him. Simply he did not bestow. Latu also proves he fully deserves whatever the spiritual blessings Sri Ramakrishna has to give. He is a fit aspirant to receive that. He proves in his life, and literally he obeys Sri Ramakrishna to the letter in every matter and becomes a great saint, a shepherd saint you can call, because he was a shepherd before coming to Sri Ramakrishna, before leaving his village. He was looking after the cows and also the sheep and all. So he was a shepherd by birth, but an unlettered shepherd can become a great saint. This we find in other saints' lives also. Many of the saints were not educated at all, but their devotion to the Lord was unparalleled. So this lesson we should learn from Latu Maharaja's life, that what counts most to the God is how much devotion you have got to Him, how much sincerity you have got to Him, how much longing you have to see the God. If these things are there, all the other things are surpassed, and he or she will definitely become a saint, or if not, they will definitely realize the God. And now, by virtue of Master's touch, Swami Adbhutanandaji attained the highest wisdom. Swami Turiyanandaji, and another monastic disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, a learned Pandit also, he remarks about Swamiji, about Swami Adbhutanandaji. He says, many of us had a had to go through the muddy waters of intellectual knowledge before we attained God. But Latu jumped over them like Hanuman, and his life teaches us how to live in God without touching the dirt of the world. This was Swami Turiyanji's famous saying about Latu Maharaj, because he also saw him, and he himself had led a thorough monastic life, and he has struggled to realize God. And he himself was a good learned Swami, and he had Vedantic knowledge, both scriptural as well as spiritual. So, Sri Ramakrishna, he tells about Latu Maharaj, he says, one day, gems of the Vedas and Vedanta will pour forth from your lips. We will see how true it became in later days of Swami Adbhutanandaji. He says, you may not have education, you might not have learned anything, but the supreme knowledge you will have. But once you have the supreme knowledge, then you will see what Vedantic words, Vedantic teachings, when we see the teachings of Swami Adbhutanandaji, you will understand it was no less to any other direct disciples' teachings, because it was the direct knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna himself used to say, I have not read anything, but the mother, goes on telling to me what I should talk. It is mother who sits on my tongue and talks. And the same thing will happen in the case of Latu Maharaja also. And his humility was so much that Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, a famous household disciple, he said of Latu Maharaj, he says, Sir, permit me to write once what happens. Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, a disciple, a household disciple of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda loved him very much because of his learning. He had studied all the Vedas, but at the same time, he had the highest humility also. With Swami Vivekananda, he used to discuss hours together about the scriptural matters, and Swamiji also loved him very much. But when he saw Latu Maharaj, that is, he said about him, Sir, please do not. One day he goes to Latu Maharaj and tells him, he was very much impressed, Sir, I am thinking of writing a biography about you and also the teachings which you are giving. Because a lot of disciples used to come to Latu Maharaj to hear his talks. Talks means not lectures, only conversations. They will put questions and Latu Maharaj will answer in such a way that they were all you can find only in the Upanishads or in the Bhagavad Gita. Such teachings he used to give, but based on the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. He was a very good listener. Very attentively he used to listen to whatever the master used to say from the day one when he started coming to Sri Ramakrishna. So Sharat Chandra Chakravarti wanted to write a life of Swami Adbhutanandaji. Then what was Adbhutanandaji's reply? I'm sir, please do not write anything about me. I am an insignificant person. If you wish to write anything, then write about Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Sharada Devi. Why? Because that will benefit the humanity. He was such a humble person. He said, don't write anything about me because that is all useless. If you write about Sri Ramakrishna, our mother, or Swamiji, it will benefit the world. Now, because of that, we do not know much about the boyhood days of Latu Maharaja, or he was earlier called as Ratturam, till he came to Sri Ramakrishna. It is Sri Ramakrishna he starts calling Latu, and then that Latu Maharaj name becomes famous. But with great difficulty, they discovered he came from Bihar, probably the first disciple of Sri Ramakrishna to come from other state. All the others we find, they were all from Bengal only. This Ratturam, he came from Bihar. He was born to a family, but unfortunately, he lost his parents in an early age. Then he was brought up by his uncle. His uncle had great love for him, and he was a middle class man. But unfortunately, he also falls into debts, and he had no means to take care of himself and also this Latu. Someday they decide we shall go to Kolkata. There we shall try to find some job and let us settle there. That is how Latu Maharaj with his uncle, he comes to the Kolkata. Then after coming to the Calcutta, he was searching for a job, and his uncle was not very poor, but his earning was not too much. So he and Raktaram came to Calcutta. How did they come? Walking several hundred miles. That means you can well imagine how many days it might have, or how many months it might have taken. But anyhow, they went on the way, somehow maintaining themselves. They reached the Calcutta. Then, through somebody's help, they come to Ramachandra Datta. Now, Ramachandra Datta, he was looking for a boy for his household works. Then when he saw Raktaram, that is Latu Maharaj, then he agrees to keep him at his house and provide him shelter, clothes, and also some money. So he was very happy. Ramachandra Datta, you see how the coincidence. Ramakrishna Datta was a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. He used to come to Sri Ramakrishna very often, and his wife also was a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. Now, he's an young boy, probably 16 or 15 or 14 or 15 or 16 years, because that age also is not clearly known. Anyhow, that boy, he stayed. He was a very hard working boy, and he was also honest and also very energetic, and he won the trust of all his house people. They all started loving him and also trusting. The servant, that is the problem, you see. Trust is the biggest problem. But this boy was so truthful, so honest. So they all started treating him as one of their own house relative or like that, or one amongst them. So he had that freedom, and Ramchandra Datta used to believe him. He used to send him for marketing and all the vegetable, grocery, everything he used to go, and very enthusiastically, energetically he used to go. Ramachandra Datta had a friend in his house. Ramachandra Datta had a friend. He used to come often to his house and also to his shop. One day he told him, probably he had some bitter experiences in his house about the servants. So he told Ramachandra Datta, see, it is not proper to believe boys so much and give so much of money for marketing and all those things. Ramachandra Datta laughs and he tells him, "Arey, what are you talking? I know about this boy. He is so honest. I can believe him fully. But he told this Ramchandra Datta friend one day, asked this Latu, hey, you went with so much money, and how much money you pocketed for yourself, like a commission. Whatever money was given, did you do this very honestly, or have you taken away some money from that?" Then immediately Latu becomes very angry. He says, "Sir, I am a servant, no doubt, but never a thief. I don't touch even a pie of others' money." This Ramachandra Datta's friend became ashamed. He felt sad. He said, "Oh, what a boy he is." Unnecessarily made a comment on him. But mm, Lato did not mind it at all. He forgot it. He forgot what this gentleman had said. Then Ramachandra Datta very often used to go to Sri Ramakrishna. And his habit was, see, if you go to Sri Ramakrishna, you will learn so many things, and especially the wonderful teachings. And that too teachings which will touch your heart. And also day-to-day examples Sri Ramakrishna used to give. And stress on the only purpose of life is God realization. God realization. Apart from that, never nothing else Sri Ramakrishna teaches a person. Everybody who used to go to him used to get convinced that we have come to this world only to realize God. It becomes all the more clear when we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in which contains lot of conversations of Sri Ramakrishna. When you read that, you will also feel, every devotee will naturally feel that we have come to this world for the God realization and all the things are secondary. But however we may read, because our samskaras, because our mind which always goes outwardly, that we forget it. We constantly to remember it, we have the only way is to go on reading that gospel again and again, and also to read the lives of these great saints. When you read the life of Latu Maharaj, you will understand how he struggled for the God realization and how straight the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna went into his heart. So Ramachandra Datta, whenever he used to go to Sri Ramakrishna, he used to listen to the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and come back, because his wife was also a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. Both of them used to discuss what Sri Ramakrishna has said on that day. And when they were talking, Latu used to sit there and listen to what these people say. And when he used to discuss with his wife, Latu used to sit with them and listen to this also. One day, Ramachandra Datta tells his wife that, you see, she asked, what did Sri Ramakrishna teach today? Then Sri Ramakrishna naturally will have discussion with so many people, but each discussion will be applicable to every devotee, not only that particular devotee who asked the question. So that day he says, God sees to the mind of a man without concern for what he is or where he is. He was he who longs for God and wants none other than God, to such a man, God reveals himself. A beautiful teaching. He says here, God does not see, because in Sri Ramakrishna's room itself, different types of devotees used to come and sit. There used to be Keshav Chandra Sen, there used to be Mahendranath Datta, there used to be Naren. Some are very learned, some are very rich, some are holding high position. All such people used to sit, and Sri Ramakrishna used to talk. While talking to each devotee, he will not tell separately. He will tell what they require, what is their path. But in general, when he is talking, he talks which will be applicable to everybody. So that day he has said, God does not see to the mind of a man without concern for what he is, or where he is, or how rich he is. He who longs for God and wants none other than God, to such a man, God reveals himself. How to see God? Whom does he God favor? God does not see how much wealth you have got, how much educated you are, from which family you are coming. All those things are immaterial for God. God will see your inner being. God will see your mind. God will see how pure you are and how much you are repeating His name. And to such a person, if you are extremely great devotees means what? We do not want anything other than God. This is a main teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. But however he hammers to our hearts, we forget. Our mind always goes outwardly, and very rarely it holds on to God and God alone. But Sri Ramakrishna says, if a man can hold on to God and God alone, then God will immediately appear. He will reveal himself, what is his true nature. So this is the teaching that day he had given. So these words made a great impact on Latu's mind. Ramachandra Datta is telling his wife, this is the talk it was today, and we should long for God and God alone. Latu, he has not seen Sri Ramakrishna, not yet gone to the Dakshineshwar, but he has already developed a love and devotion for Sri Ramakrishna, because the teachings made such an impact on this young boy. He was a young boy only, and also, after all, a servant, and also uneducated. But his love for God starts from this day. After hearing that, he becomes These words make a great impact on this boy. He used to, and Sri Ramakrishna tells that day you should shed tears for God. That is a common teaching. You householders, you shed tears for wife, wealth, position, name, fame. But who weeps for God? Who weeps for God? God, I have not seen you. When will you show your mercy on me? When you will be kind? When you will reveal yourself to me? Like that, do we shed tears? Very rarely. Tears comes because of our suffering of the worldly things. For that we weep, but not for God. So Latu heard this, but that day he covered himself in the, it is a night, sleeping, but he went on crying, crying, crying. In the morning, whole blanket was wet. So much he has cried. For what? He did not understand anything, but he understood only that sentence that we should weep for God. Weep for God. What was his prayer, we do not know, but in the morning, the whole blanket was wet. So we can understand by this how sincere this boy was. The words of Ramakrishna, you should weep for God. Then immediately he started weeping. What he was praying, we do not know, but he was weeping. Then, from next morning onward, his longing was, it's a very important thing. He started feeling, I should go and meet this great man, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. I have not seen him, but his words are so nectar-like. And if I see him, how much more I will be happy. But he is after all a servant boy. He cannot express. And it is also nearly a long distance from Kolkata to Dakshineshwar. So, one day, Ramachandra Datta, he, as I said earlier, he used to go to Sri Ramakrishna very often. He was getting ready to go to Dakshineshwar. He has purchased some fruits and sweets he was carrying for Sri Ramakrishna. Then seeing that, Raktaram or Latu Maharaj immediately understood he is going to Dakshineshwar. He went very humbly and with fear. Then he begged his master. He said, Sir, if you don't mind, can I also accompany you to Dakshineshwar? Then Ramachandra Datta, the devotee, immediately he agreed. He said, all right, come, I also will have a company. You can carry this, my bags. So he carried that bag of sweets and fruits and walked with him to Dakshineshwar. Then Sri Ramakrishna saw this boy. He has come. He looked at Latu and asked, where did you get him? I see some holy signs. As soon as Sri Ramakrishna saw, he could very well understand he belongs to his inner circle. So he asked Ramachandra Datta, who is this boy? Where from you got him? By looking at him, I feel an attraction to him. He seems to be a very pure boy. And he has got some holy signs. There are some ever-free souls. They are like underground springs. You dig a little, then water will, immediately it will flow. Plenty of water will come. Like this, Latu is like that. He is spiritually a very ripe soul. If he practices a little, he will be able to realize God. So, where did you get such a boy? Then, see, Ramachandra explains that he is the servant boy in his house. Then, later, Latu Maharaj, also seeing Sri Ramakrishna, immediately got attracted, just like a magnet attracts a needle. Sri Ramakrishna attracted Latu towards him. His joy knew no bounds just by seeing him. Then Sri Ramakrishna called him and just touched him once. Immediately, as soon as he touched him, Latu Maharaj entered into an ecstatic state, and his mind somehow lost all consciousness, and he was sitting like a statue, and tears were flowing from his eyes. Mm. After an hour or so, Sri Ramakrishna touched him again, and he came back to consciousness, normal consciousness. But his heart, Latu's heart was filled with joy, for which he was longing. It was there inside, but a guru was required to light the torch. And Sri Ramakrishna, by a mere touch, he transformed his Latu. And all because he richly deserved, because he was longing for God, he was weeping for God, and he was a straightforward, truthful, honest boy. No sort of any sin has touched him so far. So he was a clean person, pure person. You can well understand how Sri Ramakrishna would be happy to see such boys. So Sri Ramakrishna too got attracted and he understood he belongs to this place. So he touched him. Sri Latu Maharaja went to ecstasy, and for a long time she was shedding tears, and then after an hour or so, Sri Ramakrishna touched him again. Then he came to normal consciousness. Then, when they were leaving, Sri Ramakrishna, affectionately looking at Latu, he said to Ramchandra Datta, "You see, you please send this boy often. Let him come whenever it is possible." Because he also knew that this boy was working for Ramachandra Datta. In his household work, he has to help. He has to help his wife, he has to do the marketing, he has to wash the clothes, all household work he was doing. So, if all of a sudden, if he comes away from to Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna was very considerate. He knew Ramachandra Datta will be put into difficulties. So he said, "You send him once in a while." Hmm. Now, it so happens, Latumara later days, he says, on the first day of going to Sri Ramakrishna, I returned back home with Ramachandra Datta, but only my body returned, but my mind, soul, everything inner feeling, it all remained at Dakshineshwar itself. Only he was longing, when can I go again? Mm. Another day, after some days, he was regularly praying, "Oh Sri Ramakrishna, make some arrangement so that I can come and meet you. I can come and meet you." He did not want to disturb Ramachandra Datta by asking, "Permit me to go to Dakshineshwar." But he was praying, praying. From wherever you pray, the Lord hears. Sri Ramakrishna could understand the mind of the Latu, that his mind is here only. In later days, we will find that one day Latu Maharaj, with lot of disciples, devotees, he was sitting. Suddenly, he raises his hands and he does one pranam, looking towards Kolkata railway station. Then they were all surprised. The devotees who were sitting there, "Maharaj, whom are you bowing down?" Then Latu Maharaj says, "No, morning one devotee had come. He had some work in Calcutta. He comes from my village. He told, 'Sir, after finishing all my work, before going, I will come and meet you.' Unfortunately, it became late, so he could not come. At the railway station, remembering that he was feeling sad that he could not come to me, then from there itself he did pranam. 'Maharaj, excuse me, I am unable to come, it is late, I am returning, I have to catch the train.' So I could see. So I did pranam from here itself to that man, all right, go and come, go and come. I said goodbye to him. That means the saints can understand every heart of the devotees. How much more will be the God than you just imagine. So always we should remember whether I am seeing God or whether I am remembering God or not, but God is looking at me, God is seeing at me. If this teaching should go deep into our heart, see, we are all devotees, but we are not ordinary devotees. We are devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna wanted all of us to see God in this very life. It is possible. Repeatedly he says, God can be seen, God can be seen. Weep for him, pray for him, think of him. So, the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna should remember that Sri Ramakrishna is always looking at us. We also should remember him as much as possible. This we find in the life of Latu Maharaj. Latu Maharaj could see his devotees, how they are praying for him. So, afterwards, Sri Ram, one day, Ramachandra Datta says, hey, today I am not able to go. You please take these sweets and fruits and give it to Sri Ramakrishna and come. When he said that, you can imagine the joy of Latu. What Latu wanted, the same thing Ramachandra Datta is telling. This is because of his sincere prayer. His prayer, God himself will arrange all the other things if we are sincere and sincerely pray. And from Dakshineshwar to Ramachandra Datta's house, it is nearly 6 miles. 6 miles, when you can well imagine how many kilometers, what a distance. And Latu, a young boy about 12 or 14 years now, he very happily, jubilantly, he started. He did not walk. Literally, he ran because of the attraction of Sri Ramakrishna. Such a long distance he ran, and then so he gave him, Sri Ramakrishna was very happy. He has taken the fruits and sweets and everything he gave to him. And then Sri Ramakrishna told him, as usual, you visit all the temples today. So Latu did not have much mind. He did not want to leave the presence of Sri Ramakrishna and go. But Master's command. Master's telling itself is a command to him. So he went. He went to the Dakshineshwar Kali temple, all the Shiva temples, and then the Radha Krishna temple. All the temples he visited, and he came. By that time it was afternoon. So, because he started in the morning and reached there about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, then going to these temples and all, and coming back to Sri Ramakrishna, it was Sri Ramakrishna's food time. Then Sri Ramakrishna told him, you see, today you take prasad here itself. Then Latu said, no, sir, I will go back to home. No, just obey. He again and again Sri Ramakrishna is telling, but Latu Maharaj, even though did not want to disobey the master, he had some problem. The problem was he knew probably a scene when he went to the Kali temple. There, the fish and other things are offered. From Bihar, and this boy was a vegetarian from the young age. So he hesitated that if I have to eat, I may have to eat fish. So he was avoiding. Then Sri Ramakrishna immediately understood. No. We have other prasadam also. Pure vegetarian prasadam we have. It is offered in the Krishna temple. That will not harm you. You eat that. Then Latu became very happy. Then he took that, and also then till evening he stayed there. That was, they say, February 1880. That means afterwards another 6 years, Latu Maharaj will have the company of Sri Ramakrishna. on, Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't know, disconnect I time. Phone Sri Ramakrishna told him, you see, Latu, you take some money from that box and go by boat or go by a horse carriage. But Sri Ramakrishna, but Latu was not ready for that. No, sir, no, sir, I have got money with me. And like a child, he jingled his pocket and jingled the sound of the coins. He said, you see, I have got changes in my pocket. Sri Ramakrishna became very happy of his innocent way of behaving. And then he said, all right, you go and come now. After returning, the whole day he spent there. After returning, he lost interest, total interest in staying at then Ramachandra Datta's house. His mind was longing to go to Sri Ramakrishna. What time is it? Yes. So he lost interest to staying at Ramachandra's house. Again, on another day, only his body was remaining in Datta's house, but his mind was fully occupied with the thoughts of Sri Ramakrishna and Ramakrishna alone. Just imagine if one can keep his mind in Sri Ramakrishna, remembering him constantly, what will be the effect? We try so much, but we fail. The worldly things, worldly relations, worldly objects, everything make us forget Sri Ramakrishna. But Ramachandra, this boy, even though he was in Ramachandra's house, his mind was only in Sri Ramakrishna, always thinking what Sri Ramakrishna said, how to practice that. That was one thought was lingering in his mind. Now, another day he came to Dakshineshwar. That day he had determined that I will not go back. I will stay at Dakshineshwar itself. It was a great difficulty for Sri Ramakrishna to send him back. He told him, you see, you are in Ramachandra Datta's house. You are working for him. If you stay here, to how much of difficulty he will be put into. Who will do your work there? And also you are paid by Ramachandra Datta. And how can you stay here? He went on arguing, but he is not convinced. Then, and also he gave another reason, and he was very adamant. You see, shortly I am going to Kamarpukur. I will not be here. So in a day or two I am leaving for Kamarpukur. When I come back from Kamarpukur, let us see what can be done. But today you go. But very reluctantly. So then he said, then Sri Ramakrishna gave him one advice. He told him, do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. You may be staying in Ramachandra's house, it does not matter. You will be working, it does not matter. Do all the duties. What all will be convenient, will be help Ramachandra Datta. You should do all those things. And also he said, serve, that day he was telling to other devotees also, serve your father, mother, wife, son as your own, but always know that they are not yours. Just like a maid servant, now just like a maid servant lives in a house of a rich man, look after their children, she will be looking after their children. She will be so much loving, my Rama, my Krishna and all. But the day the house owner says, your service is not required anymore, she will not wait for a minute. She will settle the account and immediately go back to her village. All her mind would be always in her village where her children are there. She will be thinking of them alone and not these children whom she is taking care of. So Sri Ramakrishna tells Latu, you see, you stay in Ramachandra's house, do all the duties, but keep your mind at Dakshineshwar in me. Latu was very, very happy. He could do like that. So he was staying, but still he wanted, no, I want to go to Dakshineshwar. I want to stay with my master 24 hours. He was longing, and he was longing when Sri Ramakrishna will return from Kamarpukur. Always used to inquire Ramachandra Datta, has he come back? Has he come back? Then one day he came, even when Sri Ramakrishna was not there. He could not control himself. Then Ramlal was there, he was the pujari. Then he said, oh, Latu, Ramakrishna has gone to Kamarpukur. We do not know when he will return. What will you do? Anyhow, come eat some prasad. And then today evening you go back. But he was not ready. He said, no, I don't want any prasad. Who said Sri Ramakrishna is not there? And he sat on the bank of the Ganges and went on crying, 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 crying for Sri Ramakrishna. After finishing the puja and all, Ramlal came back. He saw Latu is sitting there only. Then he went near him. Then he saw Latu touching the ground and bowing down again and again, again and again. After some time, he looked at Ramlal and he said, hey, you said Sri Ramakrishna is not there. You see, he is very much here. Does it mean that Sri Ramakrishna gave his vision to him? Sri Ramakrishna gave his darshan to him. Latu was extremely happy and he was shedding joy, tears of joy from both his eyes. So Ramlal became perplexed. Then in the evening he went back to his house. Then after 8 long months, then Sri Ramakrishna came back. When he came back, this time he was very adamant that I will stay here. But again, Sri Ramakrishna convinced him and he sent him back. Then one day he advised him, Latu, you see, wine, lust, and gold, these creates doubt in God. So remember all these things and keep away from these things. He could understand what Sri Ramakrishna is telling. He never had attraction for any of these three things. Anyhow, when he was returning, he had to pass through a shop of a wine shop, and that smell entered his nose. Then he felt a little restless. Nothing, simple restless. And then he went back home. And when he came again, next time when he came, he told, sir, what you said is true. I passed through that wine shop. Then that because of that smell, I became restless. Sri Ramakrishna laughed and said, no, no, it is not going to matter anything. Don't worry. But Latu, even though he heard like that, then to avoid that wine shop, another 4 miles extra he had to walk circumambulating that place. He went through the other roads and it became a long distance and long time. But when he came next and he said to Sri Ramakrishna, sir, I'm not going that way at all. Then Sri Ramakrishna appreciated him, but he blessed him and said, don't worry, nothing will happen to you. You can go even you can live in that shop. Nothing can touch you. You are a very pure boy. Go in the same road. Then getting the assurance from the Sri Ramakrishna, and again he started going in the same road. Now, this goes on like this, and the Sri Ramakrishna one had a great affection for him, great love for him. Another important teaching are from his life what we have to learn. In every action of his, we should try to find out what we can learn. When he started after some time, Sri Ramakrishna allows him to stay with him. Ramachandra also gladly permits him because at that time Hriday had gone and Sri Ramakrishna had nobody to stay with him. So he tells Ramadatta, can you leave this boy here? Ramachandra happily agrees and his wife also was very happy. Our Latu will be staying with Sri Ramakrishna because even here day and night he is thinking of him only. Then Latu Maharaj, every day, as soon as he gets up, he used to sleep either in the veranda or in his Ramakrishna's room only, and serving him day and night, very, very diligently, with full devotion, respect, serving God. You can well imagine. And his one duty, one thing was early morning, as soon as he gets up, first he would see the face of Sri Ramakrishna. Without seeing the face of Sri Ramakrishna, he will not get up from his bed at all. So Sri Ramakrishna, he will call as soon as he get up, Master, where are you? I want to see you. Closing his eyes with the hands, he will tell. Sri Ramakrishna, if he is in the room, he will come in front of him. If he is nearby somewhere, he will wait for him. One day it so happens that Sri Ramakrishna was not in the room. Latu went on shouting, went on requesting. After some time, Sri Ramakrishna comes, and by that time, this boy has come up to the door, closing his eyes with the two hands, and he is shouting, Thakur, where are you? Thakur, where are you? Then Sri Ramakrishna comes, and his love for his devotee, you see, he was holding a chappal in his hand. Then Latu Maharaj became very disheartened. Who is this chappal, Guru? He asked where it had gone. Then he said, no, no, Latu, yesterday a devotee had told a devotee to bring a pair of chappals for you. He had brought a new chappals and it was kept outside. Yesterday night, either jackal or a dog has carried away one of your chappals. Morning when I got up and saw, only one chappal was there. So I went searching, Panchavati and all. At last I got it, so I brought it back. Oh, Latu Maharaj could not contain himself. What, sir, I have come here to serve you, and you have to serve, and that too for a chappal. And he went on knocking his head to a door and crying. Then Sri Ramakrishna consoled him. Now here, one important thing we have to remember is, as soon as we get up, we are all devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. First thing what we have to do is look at the photo of Sri Ramakrishna. Without seeing the photo of Sri Ramakrishna, we should not see anybody. And we should start our day with the bowing down to Sri Ramakrishna from the bed itself. Sri Ram, as I told you earlier, whether you are seeing or not, Sri Ramakrishna is seeing with you. You are his devotee. So, to make our life blessed, to make our whole day a happy and joyous one, to make our day trouble-free, you will have to pray to Sri Ramakrishna. And the best thing is to look at the photo of Sri Ramakrishna, because as I repeatedly said, it is not a mere photo. Sri Ramakrishna exists there, he sits there, he looks after us, he will be looking at us. So we should, early morning, the moment we get up, first, it is not a difficult thing, but at the same time, because of our samskara, it is really difficult also. You just imagine how many days you have got up seeing the face of Sri Ramakrishna. At least from today, we shall make it a habit. As soon as we get up, first let us look at the photo of Sri Ramakrishna. So Latu had a blessing that he was staying with Sri Ramakrishna, so he could start his day looking at the face of Sri Ramakrishna in person. So Sri Ramakrishna also was gracious. He used to come and stand in front of him so that he can see him. So the God's grace will be so much on us. So we shall practice this habit. And next, how Latu used to serve Sri Ramakrishna, and how he was his monastic days, how was his tapasya days, what all the tapasya he practiced, and what was his devotion to Swamiji and Holy Mother and all. We shall see in the next discourse and complete his life in the next Friday. Thank you.
Pranam, Swamiji. Swamiji, pranam.
Namaste.
Pranam, Swamiji, pranam.
Namaste, namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.